How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video about the European farmers protest. I did a video a little while ago, maybe last week or something, about the farmers protest in Brussels. There was a lot of like French farmers, this and that. A lot of people said there was also some German farmers. And I was in the video, I was like, well, how long till the Dutch start protesting? Which they were protesting like a year ago. But I guess right after that, they started protesting too, real decent. And anyways, this one's called Europe's Farmers Are Revolting. Here's why. The channel's called Into Europe. I've done reactions to this channel before. It's a great channel. The guy's pretty sure he's from the Netherlands, and he does just a lot of good videos. In fact, I'll show you the channel right here. Yeah, so he does all sorts of good videos right here. Like why Hungary helps Russia, what if the US abandons Ukraine, the digital euro explained. I actually did a reaction to that one. Um, why Europe fell behind the United States, which I don't know, probably maybe technology. I don't know. Because like ASMR's in the Netherlands, and without ASMR, we wouldn't have microchips. So Europe is losing its factories. Like there's a ton of good videos on this channel, so I highly recommend it. Make sure you go check it out. And yeah, so we're gonna check out this video here, and like I said, links in the description section, and we're gonna learn a little bit more about these farmers' protests.
Europe's farmers are revolting. Across Europe, they're blocking roads, driving their tractors into cities, and dumping manure on government buildings.
Yeah, and they're burning stuff in the streets too. The video that I did one reaction to, the police were standing there like with their riot shields and like spraying them with water with the fire hose, and they were just like shooting fireworks at the cops. It was funny.
What started off in the Netherlands and Poland has spread to other European countries, where farmers have demonstrated their anger against the European Green Deal's environmental rules, inflation, cheap imports from Ukraine, and the prospect of imports from South America.
For a small farmer, this threatens completely their business model.
But it's not only about the new legislation. Farmers are faced with a series of headwinds that threaten their ability to stay in business, and poses a severe question on the ability of the EU's agricultural model to stay competitive and keep feeding its people. So why are Europe's farmers so mad? Is this actually all the EU's fault? And what will come next?
Well, from what I heard in the comments section, a lot of it has to do with the government subsidizes, like the money that the government pays the farmers. They're cutting that. I guess the prices of everything is going through the roof, like all the stuff that they need to like maintain their farms and stuff. Whereas the price of the produce is hitting rock bottom because they have these cheap imports from other countries that they're like something to do with the imports. Like so they're bringing in a lot of imported vegetables and goods and stuff from other countries, which is driving the price down. So the farmers can't compete with it, but yet the price of everything else is going up, and then the government's like cutting their funding or something. I could be wrong, just a little bit of what I gathered in the comments section on the last video, but of course he's going to clarify it for us, I would assume, in this video.
So the EU is a food superpower, albeit a fragile one. And when we look at the data on European food exports, the EU has never exported more food products than it does today. Since 2002, the amount of food exported by the EU has nearly tripled. Just take a look at this map.
Wow.
Europe is one of the most heavily farmed regions of the world. Part of this is the result of the Common Agricultural Policy, which makes up a third of the EU budget and was set up to end the rampant food shortages after the end of World War II. But at the same time, the EU has never imported as much food as it does now either. And that's because part of European agriculture is quite globalized. On the one hand, it imports commodity products like soybeans from Brazil, which it then feeds to livestock to export high value added animal products. But this trade is not only the result of strategic choices, it's also the result of the EU's strict food safety standards. European milk powder, for example, is prized worldwide, particularly in China, which saw a tainted milk scandal that poisoned nearly 300,000 infants in 2008.
Well, that's not good. And probably the reason that's prized worldwide is because they actually take care of their cows a lot better than like we do, for instance, here in America. They're grass fed, a lot of them. They're just eating natural stuff, whereas over here we're just feeding them like pellets and like crap. So you get crap quality milk, crap quality meat.
This trade represents about 7.6% of the EU's total trade and is quite profitable for the farmers that participate in it. But this focus on high-value products, combined with the fact that European farmland makes up such a big proportion of total land use, has quite some environmental implications. The Netherlands, which is Europe's champion of farm profit maximalization, thanks to its large meat and dairy industry, has some of the highest nitrogen emissions in all of Europe.
Okay, so total nitrogen emissions to air and total nitrogen losses to aquatic systems. So what does that mean by losses to aquatic systems? So are we supposed to have nitrogen in the water systems? I'm not sure what that means, but really though, oh wow, I guess yeah, you can see it's pretty crazy, but I mean it looks like England's not far behind it. The top part of Italy as well, and what is that? Western France, and of course Denmark. Okay.
Which are responsible for health issues and damage biodiversity. Yet not all European farmers are producing milk, cheese, and meat, and for those that don't, life is much harder. The EU basically has a two-tiered agricultural system, with on the one side those that are specialized in high-value export products like wine, livestock, or dairy, as well as large, modern, productive farms. If you're one of those farmers, good for you. You're basically a winner of globalization, or you're competitive enough to be able to navigate it successfully. On the other hand, are the losers of globalization, the series of mostly small family-run farms which don't produce those high-value products and have fewer means to invest in increasing their productivity.
What do we got here? Farm net value added per farm by organizational form and by type of farming in the European Union in 2018. Field crops, horticulture, wine. Okay, so green is companies with profit objective. Blue is family farms, which of course is pretty low. Companies with non-profit objectives is the lowest or pretty close, right? Family farms. Okay, partnerships is yellow. Horticulture, wine, other permanent crops, dairy, other grazing livestock, granivores, and mixed.
We can actually see this on this graph with the value of farm by type, where we can see that Europe's smallest farms are the least profitable by far. And this
Yeah.
is the point where we have to talk about EU subsidies in the form of the Common Agricultural Policy, and where its billions of euros go. After all the farmers get so much money, so what are they complaining about? Well, if we break down the Common Agricultural Policy, we can see that it gives out money for four main things. BIS, which grants incomes the larger your farm is. CRIS, which grants income for the first few hectares and basically gives support to small farmers. CIS, which supports certain crop producers. And finally, eco schemes that grant money for sustainable land management.
So the larger your farm is, the more percentage you get. That would make sense why those profitable companies take up so much of the space, huh?
The subsidy system and the way it's set up results in two contradictory things that are happening at the same time. On the one hand, the 20% largest EU farms receive 80% of all the subsidy money. After all, most of the subsidies are granted on a per hectare basis.
Yeah.
The more land, the more potential for subsidies. But at the same time, if we look at the share of subsidy revenue as a share of farm value, we can see that Europe's smallest farms are hyper-dependent on the remaining subsidies that they receive, with EU subsidies making up roughly 55% of the value added of the EU's smallest farms. And if we look at a breakdown by sector, we can see that the meat farms, mixed-use farms, and grain farms receive the most subsidies. In other words, the CAP is making sure that Europe keeps producing things like grain or meat, which would probably be unprofitable otherwise. But it's also keeping less competitive small farms that would otherwise likely be out of business alive. Yet even despite the support, it's tough being a small farmer. EU farming has been consolidating into larger and larger farms over the past 2 decades. In 2020, there were 37% fewer farms than in 2005, while the
Jeez.
amount of land in cultivation stayed mostly the same.
Because the farms are getting bigger. Yeah, so just like over here in America, like the big chain, the big corporations like Walmart and all that kind of stuff is basically forcing out the small, like mom and pop stores in the smaller towns and everything, because it's just, easier for the consumer just to go to Walmart and buy everything they need instead of going to a bunch of little smaller stores. So the big corporations, the big profitable farms, evidently are pushing out the small ones, is what it seems like to me.
It's in this context of a two-tiered agricultural system and farm consolidation that European farmers are faced with a triple storm, in the form of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, climate change, and the EU's new environmental policies, not least the Farm to Fork package. But let's start with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for which there were several consequences. First, a rise in global commodity prices for things like fertilizers, for which Russian export quotas limited availability and increased prices. Then, high natural gas prices as a result of economic sanctions imposed by Europe meant that many of the continent's energy-intensive fertilizer factories shut down, many permanently, leading to more expensive international imports from the United States, affecting the bottom line of farmers.
Yeah, because doesn't a lot of the natural gas actually come from Russia? Like, not all of it, of course, but a lot of it. So when they sanction that, of course, it's going to have an economic impact. Like, we're feeling it over here even. Like, ever since that started, like, prices of everything is going up, it seems like.
At the same time, in an attempt to keep the Ukrainian economy afloat, the EU has been letting in grain and other agricultural products like poultry, eggs, sugar, and oilseeds into the single market, where they outcompete European producers.
Yeah, that's the cheap imports that the people in the comment section were talking about.
Agricultural imports from Ukraine nearly doubled between 2021 and 2022, as agricultural products were being redirected from blockaded ports in the Black Sea to Poland and Romania. On top of this, farmers, particularly in southern Europe, have been affected by reduced yields due to droughts and floods that are expected to become more frequent with climate change. And now enters the EU, with both its reform of the Common Agricultural Policy and its signature Farm to Fork strategy, here to tackle some of the very real environmental problems linked with EU agriculture. So the CAP reform changed somewhat the way in which money was allocated. They tried to increase conditionality.
They tried to increase conditionality, like payments should not be just direct payments per hectare. There should be some conditions.
These included, for example, a measure to leave 4% of fields fallow, as in empty, though it has never been actually applied to this date. On top of this, the EU created...
Why would they want 4% of the fields empty? That makes no sense to me. And like nitrogen's good for the soil, right? Like you need nitrogen to grow crops. So I don't understand that part either.
Created the Farm to Fork strategy as part of the European Green Deal, which aimed to make European agriculture greener and tackle some of the very real problems linked with EU farming, such as unhealthy soils and poor biodiversity, which would also eventually lead to a loss of output. The way it planned to do this was by increasing organic farming by 25%, reduce fertilizer use by 20%, and pesticide use and risk by 50%. But the thing is, the results of the CAP reform and the Farm to Fork strategy are quite predictable. Lower yields. According to this report by the GRC, the research arm of the European Commission, the Farm to Fork strategy, with its focus on organic farming and reduced pesticide and fertilizer use, would result in a 10 to 15% fall in many of the EU's agricultural outputs.
Wow. So right here, area or animal number and supply changes in 2030 for the F2F and BDS targets in CAP 2014 to 2020 scenario relative to the baseline. Where's the baseline? Probably the light blue, and then the okay, supply is, oh yeah, you can tell the supply is way higher. Pig fattening, poultry fattening. Okay, so the supply is less than what they have on the poultry fattening, I guess, if that's a good thing. I don't know. I don't know how to read this graph, to be honest with you. I don't even know I'm trying.
These decreases in production would have to be outsourced from elsewhere, and also raise food prices by an average of 12%, according to that very same report.
Don't raise food prices. It's already high enough, guys.
Some of these objectives seem very bold, but some people said, well, you're asking us to do this and there's no funding back in it.
So if I had to summarize the farmer revolt in Europe in one sentence, it would be that they are the result of a two-tiered farming system where less economically viable farms are being supported by an increasingly demanding subsidy system that would require production cuts for environmental reasons, affecting their bottom line while at the same time experiencing external shocks.
Yeah, and with the organic stuff, that probably costs more. So the cost is going to go up. They're bringing in all these cheap European, these cheap imports of, from other European countries. So the price that they're going to be paying is more. The yield that they're going to be getting is less. And then on top of that, what they have to even sell after all that seems like they're going to have to sell for cheaper to even compete with the cheaper imports. That's a whole mess. I'm starting to understand it a little bit more.
That just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? So the protests are happening, farmers are mad, but what is happening now politically with the farmer backlash?
A strategy that the Commission has chosen is to scale back their ambitions and to backtrack. They have withdrew the plan for reducing pesticides in the EU officially.
As for the farm to fork strategy,
it's just fading slowly by the end of the mandate. And I think, of course, the reason might be the war in Ukraine and just food inflation, cost of living crisis, etc. I don't think they expected that when they drafted this at the end of the mandate.
So we're next.
Are they scaling it back because of the protests? Like the protests are actually working and they're realizing like we might have messed up here?
For Europe's farmers and the agribusiness.
This at the end of the mandate.
So we're next for Europe's farmers and the agribusiness industry, because after all, many of the structural issues with European farming remains. Small farms are still unprofitable, the environment is still being damaged, and climate change is still a thing. Well, that depends on who you ask and what your goal is, but there are 4 overlapping and possibly complementary ways for Europe to move forward. The first pathway would be to push ahead with the current strategy and promote Europe's more environmentally friendly small farm model and promote green farming practices. But that would increase Europe's dependency on other parts of the world, require a reallocation and potential increase in subsidy money. This would also likely lead to higher food prices and to an outsourcing of both production and emissions to other parts of the world where food safety standards are not as strict. And with this approach, we can also ask ourselves one crucial question. Is it really smart to plan a decrease in food production at a time where food insecurity is on the rise globally?
No, it's not. And what he said, like, they have to source food from other countries where the regulations aren't as strict, like food safety or whatever. Just like the United States, you know, there's so many chemicals and stuff in our food here. It's clearly not good for us. Is that going to be forced onto Europe because they're going to start importing stuff from like places like the United States that care less about your health? So then you're just forced to have less quality food that's going to cost more? Is that what? Let me know what you think, guys.
If the goal is food production, profits, and food security, then the choice seems to be to increase and accelerate the consolidation of European farms, which would be bigger and more profitable and therefore more resilient to external shocks like the invasion of Ukraine. But that would come at the cost of increased environmental degradation due to the larger footprint of specialized and industrial-sized farms. Another pathway forward would be to open up European agriculture to international competition, which could lead to lower food prices. But that would mean importing food from countries which have lower sustainability requirements, use more pesticides, and create new dependencies for Europe. This approach, which includes things like the now seemingly defunct EU-Mercosur trade deal, is extremely unpopular with farmers and would introduce a new foreign competitor. And finally, a fourth pathway exists, and that is to improve Europe's agriculture through technology. This goes through European satellites like Copernicus or even drones, which allows better monitoring of crops and using the right amount of fertilizer and pesticides for fields. In another development, the European Parliament just took the first step to easing what is some of the world's strictest regulation on GMOs, opening the door to improved yields, increased drought resistance, and decreased pesticide and fertilizer needs for agriculture. Yields, what is some of the world's...
Europe has long been a bastion of skepticism about genetically engineered organisms, but today the European Parliament voted to lessen regulatory oversight of crops created through one type of DNA manipulation, gene editing. See, so gene editing, it's not necessarily creating bad food. It's just editing the genes to make that food bigger, I think. Huh. So I'm kind of on the fence about it. Like, you know, it's like, I can see both sides though.
Strictest regulation on GMOs, opening the door to improved yields, increased drought resistance, and decreased pesticide and fertilizer needs for agriculture. It's something that might actually have a chance at passing, considering the falling opposition to GMOs across the continent. But what do you think? Can Europe offer a fair deal to farmers while keeping its food production secure and improve the environment? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like the video...
Okay, so I'm going to actually check out those comments down below. Well, we are. Let's see. Let's read a few of them. It says subsidies lose their effect after a few decades because they lead to higher land prices. New farmers have to borrow more money to buy expensive land, and the interest on these loans eat up the subsidies. So in the long run, subsidies don't help the farmers. I don't have a comment on there because I don't really know. Let's see here. Excellent video as always. I agree. The solution probably lies in a combination of strategies. Not every issue can be solved immediately. We also need continual readjustment as food insecurity continues to rise. Yeah. It says right here, I've been watching this channel for a whole year and I still cannot tell where this guy's from. Feels like he has 5 accents at the same time. I'm pretty sure he's Dutch. People are saying Belgium. My guess is Belgium. People then they say Netherlands. And then somebody says, hasn't he said he's French? A couple people says he's from France. Huh. And then somebody else said, guys, literally just look at his about section. He's Dutch. Yeah, his about section definitely does say the channel was created in the Netherlands, but that doesn't mean for sure that that just means he lives there and that's where he created his channel, right? But my guess is he's Dutch. He's definitely got a Dutch accent to me. But again, maybe he's French. He moved there, and the Dutch accent rubbed off on him. Who knows? But he doesn't. To me, it does not sound like a French accent at all. Well, anyways, that was a good video. The more I watch this channel, the more I like it. Definitely recommend it. I'm gonna click like on that video. Somebody else just did actually right before I clicked on it. That's cool. But anyways, you guys have a super fun, awesome day. Let me know down in the comments what you guys' thoughts are and all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.